Welcome back. This is episode 2 of the Savvy 6. Last time we talked about you and are you ready to raise capital? In this episode, we're going to talk about your business vision and goals. Is your product and service ready to go raise capital? All that business stuff, including legal and accounting and ownership. And what about having the time for fundraising? How does that happen when you're trying to run your business? Today, we're going to get into, is your business ready? So let's start with your vision and goals for the business. Again, if you are raising capital before you start talking to investors, really important that you are clear on what you're building and what your goals are. So a little exercise I like to do with women entrepreneurs is a vision, goals, projects, and actions activity. So we'll start with the vision. Really take the time to think about what is your 3-year vision for this business. Next, talk about goals, and these goals should be 12-month goals for the company. From that, you can talk about projects which are 90-day timelines. So what projects that you need to do to get to those 12-month goals in the next 90 days. And finally, the actions for the next 7 days. So what actions do you need to take to get to those projects, to get to those goals, to achieve that longer-term vision? Once you know that and are clear on that in your mind when you're talking to investors, it's going to be so much easier for them to understand where you are in your business and how this impacts your ability to take on the capital. As you know, there are several types of corporate structures for a business, whether it's an LLC or a C Corp or a B Corp. What really matters for this conversation is that knowing that certain types of investors will require a certain type of structure. So for example, venture capitalists require you to be a C Corp and not an LLC is often the case. So really understanding the kind of capital you're going after, and we'll get into that in a subsequent episode, but really being clear on what kind of structure that you have and make sure that you are actually set up. So many people start companies and then say, I'll get to the LLC and I'll get to the operating agreement later. You've got to have that nailed down before you start talking to any potential capital provider. Next, the legal stuff. Do you have a proper corporate lawyer? So it's not your friend or your cousin that's a will lawyer or a real estate lawyer. Literally, somebody has to be a proper corporate lawyer that is taking care of all these agreements for you. This will come in be even more essential when we get to the actual funding documents. All of your agreements have to be in place. So whether that is founder agreements, I mean, so many times I've talked to women entrepreneurs who there are 3 or 4 co-founders and they don't even have their co-founder agreement in place. Really, really critical. Even if you're best friends, especially if you're best friends, have this in writing. An investor is going to want to see this and know that you're all buttoned up with your agreements. Same thing with any employee agreements, any other investors you already have, any consulting contracts. That should be all taken care of and ready to show investors. Your IP. What is your IP? What is intellectual property? Trademarks, patents, copyright. Again, if your business is based on something that requires this, and let's say you have a brand and you have a consumer product and you're using a name that someone else is already using, that can take down your business and the investors will want to know that right away. Things like state filings, I know no one even remembers half the time, but you have to do, whether you're in California or a Delaware C Corp, you have to make sure that your state filings are all taken care of. Because here's the thing, investors are going to make an assumption that if you're talking to them, this stuff is already taken care of. This is something that they shouldn't even be thinking about. So if it comes out later that it's not, then that's really quite embarrassing and unfortunate and will impact your chance of actually getting investors. And now the accounting. Again, as I said in the last episode, making sure that you have your personal and business bank accounts separate, so your business accounts are all set up and ready to go, including who has signing authority and who doesn't within your organization. Reporting systems in place, your bookkeeping. I know, ladies, that this is one of the hardest parts of having a business is finding a really great bookkeeper. But you have to be diligent to have someone that you trust that is taking care of the numbers and the accounts for your business. Again, these are all things that the investors are going to make an assumption that you've got it taken care of. Taxes, make sure that your taxes are in order, that you have a good accountant or bookkeeper that's getting that sorted for you every year, and that you are on track for your taxes. And finally, ownership. The cap table. What is the cap table? It sounds like this big ominous thing that we need to have an MBA or someone create, but at the end of the day, it's actually just a simple spreadsheet that shows who owns the company and what percentage of shares they have. So for today, if it's just you own 100%. That has to actually be documented for investors to see. If you have co-founders, who has what? If you are giving stock for people for hire, so instead of paying someone to do your website or your customer acquisition program, you're giving them equity. This all has to be documented as an LLC or a C Corp or any kind of formal organization. You are a legal entity that these are really important things for you to be documented. Again, the investors are going to want to see this and make an assumption that this is totally just fine and taken care of. Moving along to readiness. Is your product or service ready and far along enough to go to market and bring on investors? So this is really something that you have to think about that's specific to your industry, and one of the best ways to think about readiness is actually talking to others, your peers, other women entrepreneurs in this space of, I'm looking to raise capital now. Is my product or service ready? Should it be farther along? Should it have more traction? Do I have proof of concept? So these are just ideas to think about in this, is your business ready, but also is your product and service ready to be able to go after external capital? The last thing I want to talk about in this episode is time. How in the world do you take the time to do all you need to do to build your business and go raise capital? I'm sure you've heard lots of your peers, or you've already done it yourself, where it takes so much time to do the investor pitches, getting your documents ready, meeting investors for coffee, going to events. Whatever it is, the key is time is limited. So what can you do with this practical reality of time? There's a couple of things that I suggest. One, obviously, delegation. Try to get creative on how you can delegate some of your business activities while you're doing the fundraising, because the fundraising really has to come from you. And second, collaboration, and that's where the We Global resources will be really helpful too, is how do you work with other women entrepreneurs around sharing resources so that you're saving time on your business and on raising capital efforts. Okay, ladies, that brings us to the end of episode 2, Is Your Business Ready? As you remember, we talked about your vision and your goals and making sure that those are really clear for you before you start talking to investors. All that business stuff, legal, accounting, tax, cap tables. There are a lot of resources on the We Global platform to help you wade through some of the stuff. And one thing I did also want to say is it's really important to not cheap out on these resources. Legal and accounting, so important. Starting your business, taking your business to the next level. Get the best resources that you can within your budget. And finally, is your product and service ready for going out to raise capital? And how do you manage your time of building your business and going out for funding? You've got this.